I'm Samantha Mitchell, 32, with an MBA and 8 months of secret work on a corporate acquisition that would change everything. My sister Jessica's fiancé Bradley had always seen me as nothing special, just the quiet sister with the boring job. At their dinner party, he introduced me to his boss as just the help tonight. Little did he know that in 2 weeks, his boss would be introducing me as his new CEO. Before I tell you how I went from being just the help to the woman who would become Bradley's boss, let me know in the comments if you've ever been underestimated in your professional life. If you're watching, hit subscribe to join me for more stories of unexpected comeuppance. I've always been the behind-the-scenes type. While my sister Jessica commanded attention with her vibrant personality and stunning looks, I found my calling in spreadsheets, financial projections, and the intricate dance of corporate strategy. My colleagues at Reynolds Financial Advisors respected my work, but I was never one to broadcast my achievements. I preferred letting my results speak for themselves. Jessica and I couldn't be more different. Growing up, she was the homecoming queen, the prom queen, the girl everyone wanted to date. I was the studious one with my nose always in a book. Don't get me wrong. I love my sister dearly. Our differences complemented each other throughout childhood, and we remained close as adults. But Jessica had always measured her worth through the men she dated, seeking validation through relationships with high-status, successful men. Enter Bradley Thompson, Vice President of Operations at Thompson Industries. No relation to the founding family, as he'd quickly inform anyone who asked. Bradley was exactly Jessica's type: tall, conventionally handsome, Ivy League education, and the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. When Jessica brought him home for the first time, I could see she was completely smitten. "He's perfect, Sam," she gushed over coffee the day after. "He's on track to become executive VP by next year. His boss Charles absolutely loves him." I smiled and nodded, happy to see my sister excited, but something about Bradley rubbed me the wrong way. Perhaps it was the way he spoke over Jessica, or how his eyes glazed over when I mentioned my work in finance. What neither Jessica nor Bradley knew was that for the past 8 months, I had been working directly with Howard Reynolds, the legendary CEO of Reynolds Enterprises, on a confidential acquisition of Thompson Industries. Reynolds Enterprises was expanding its portfolio, and Thompson's market position made it an attractive target. Howard had handpicked me for this project after I'd led a smaller acquisition the previous year. "You have a gift, Samantha," he told me during our first private meeting about Thompson Industries. "You see patterns in financials that others miss, and you understand the human element of mergers. I need both for this acquisition." The project consumed my life. I worked 14-hour days analyzing Thompson's financials, identifying synergies, planning post-merger integration, and developing strategies to retain key talent. Throughout it all, not family, not friends. This stays between us and the core team until announcement day. I agreed without hesitation. Professional discretion was second nature to me. What I didn't expect was how much Howard would come to value not just my financial expertise, but my leadership potential. 3 months into the project, after a particularly grueling week of due diligence, Howard invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant in the private room in the back. "You've exceeded every expectation I had, Samantha," he said, after ordering a bottle of wine. "The way you've handled this acquisition planning has been nothing short of remarkable." I thanked him, attributing my success to the strong team around me, but Howard waved off my modesty. "I've been watching you closely. The way you lead meetings, how you mentor junior analysts, your ability to make tough decisions while considering all stakeholders. These are rare qualities." He paused, studying me carefully. "I have a proposition for you. After the acquisition, Thompson Industries will need strong leadership to navigate the transition and implement our integration plan. I want you to be that leader." I nearly choked on my wine. "You mean as part of the transition team?" "No, Samantha. I want you to be the CEO of the acquired company." My mind raced. I'd always seen myself as an advisor, an analyst, a behind-the-scenes strategist. I'd never considered an executive position, let alone CEO. "I don't know what to say, Howard. I'm honored, but you're not sure you want that kind of visibility," he finished for me. "I understand. You've built your career on being the brilliant mind that powers others' success. But Samantha, sometimes the best leaders are those who never sought the spotlight. Over the next several weeks, Howard continued mentoring me, gradually helping me see myself in this new light. He arranged private leadership coaching sessions and introduced me to other CEOs in his network who shared their experiences. The acquisition announcement is scheduled for 6 weeks from now, Howard told me during one of our planning sessions. I need your decision by next week. Think carefully, Samantha. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I spent the weekend weighing the offer. It would mean stepping out from behind the curtain, becoming the public face of a company with hundreds of employees depending on me. It would mean Bradley would be working under me. It would mean Jessica finding out I'd kept this enormous secret. But it would also mean embracing my full potential, something I've been reluctant to do. By Monday morning, my decision was made. I'll do it, I told Howard in his office. I'll become CEO after the acquisition. Howard's face broke into a wide smile. I knew you would. You're ready for this, Samantha, even if you don't fully believe it yet. As I threw myself into preparation for both the acquisition and my new role, little did I know that a dinner party at my sister's house would become the catalyst for a confrontation I never sought but perhaps secretly needed. Please, Sam. I really need your help with this dinner. Jessica's voice had a pleading quality that was hard to resist, even through the phone. Bradley says it's really important. His boss Charles and some other executives are coming. I sighed, glancing at the stack of acquisition documents on my dining table that needed reviewing. Jess, I'm swamped with work right now. It's just one evening. I'll owe you big time. Bradley says this dinner could be crucial for his promotion. That familiar twinge of guilt hit me. The knowledge that I was working on something that would fundamentally change Bradley's company without either of them knowing. Fine, I relented. What time do you need me? That's how I found myself in Jessica and Bradley's upscale apartment the following Saturday, chopping vegetables while Jessica flitted about, more concerned with her appearance than the food preparation. How do I look? She asked, twirling in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Bradley says Charles's wife is super sophisticated. You look beautiful, Jess, I said honestly. My sister was genuinely stunning, with her perfectly highlighted hair and immaculate makeup. Next to her in my simple black pants and blouse, I felt plain and unremarkable, which truthfully was how I preferred to present myself in professional settings. Let my work speak louder than my appearance. The doorbell rang at precisely 7 o'clock. I could hear Bradley's booming voice greeting his guests while Jessica gave herself one last check in the hallway mirror before joining them. I stayed in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on the appetizers Jessica had asked me to prepare. And this is Jessica, my beautiful fiancé, I heard Bradley announce proudly from the living room. I arranged the canapés on a serving tray and carried them out. Bradley was standing with 3 men in expensive suits, his arm around Jessica's waist. I recognized Charles Wilson immediately from my research, Thompson Industries Executive Vice President and Bradley's direct supervisor. Ah, and who might this be? Charles asked as I approached with the tray. Bradley glanced at me as if just remembering I existed. Oh, that's Jessica's sister, Samantha. She's helping out tonight. The dismissive tone in his voice was unmistakable, as if I were hired help rather than family. Nice to meet you all, I said professionally, offering the tray. As Charles took an appetizer, his eyes lingered on me with curiosity. What do you do, Samantha? He asked. Before I could answer, Bradley jumped in. She works at some financial firm, pushing papers, crunching numbers, that sort of thing. He laughed lightly, as if my career was a cute hobby. She's just the help tonight, but usually pushes papers at some financial firm. Jessica laughed along, seemingly oblivious to the condescension. Sam's super smart with numbers and stuff, but so boring. I keep telling her she needs to get out more, meet someone. I maintained my professional smile, though internally I was seething. 8 years of higher education, including an MBA from Wharton, and a career that had me currently orchestrating a multi-million-dollar acquisition, reduced to pushing papers and being defined by my relationship status. Throughout dinner, Bradley continued his subtle dismissals of my career whenever the conversation turned my way. When Charles asked about my perspective on recent market trends, Bradley interrupted with a joke about how I shouldn't bore everyone with financial talk during dinner. "Let's keep the shop talk to a minimum," Bradley said with a wink to Charles. "I'm sure Samantha's work is fascinating to some, but we've got more interesting things to discuss." I noticed Charles frowning slightly at Bradley's comments, but he didn't press further. But they lack the vision and presence for leadership positions. Jessica understands that. She's focused on supporting my career, rather than trying to compete with men in the corporate world. I nearly dropped the glass I was holding. The casual sexism was bad enough, but dragging Jessica into his warped perspective made my blood boil. I wanted nothing more than to tell him exactly who would be evaluating his performance review in a few weeks' time, but my professional obligations kept me silent. Jessica remained blissfully unaware of Bradley's condescension, laughing at his jokes and playing the perfect hostess. I wondered if she truly didn't notice or if she'd become so accustomed to Bradley's behavior that it seemed normal to her. As the evening wore on, I found it increasingly difficult to maintain my composure. When my phone buzzed with a text from Howard about an urgent acquisition detail that needed addressing, I seized the opportunity. "I'm so sorry, but I have a work emergency I need to handle," I announced, gathering my things. "On a Saturday night?" Bradley scoffed. "What could possibly be so urgent in financial paperwork?" I smiled tightly. "The market doesn't always respect weekends, Bradley. It was lovely meeting you all." Charles stood and shook my hand. "A pleasure meeting you, Samantha. Perhaps our paths will cross again in a professional capacity someday." "Perhaps they will," I replied, fighting back a knowing smile. As I left the apartment, I heard Bradley's voice. "Sorry about that, Charles. Little sister is married to her work, though it's nothing important. Now about that golf tournament next month." I drove home in silence, processing my anger and hurt. It wasn't just Bradley's dismissive attitude that bothered me. It was Jessica's willing participation, her apparent acceptance of being valued primarily as Bradley's attractive, supportive fiancé rather than as her own person. For the first time since accepting Howard's offer, I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing what was coming. In just a few weeks, Bradley Thompson would learn exactly how important my work really was. The weeks following the dinner party were a balancing act of finalizing acquisition details and enduring family gatherings where Bradley continued his subtle campaign of dismissal. Each encounter added another layer of tension to my already complex emotions about the impending announcement. Sunday brunch at our parents' house became a particular form of torture. What was once a cherished family tradition now felt like an exercise in restraint as I sat across from Bradley, who dominated every conversation with tales of his corporate conquests. "The quarterly review went exactly as planned," Bradley announced, cutting into his waffle with precision. "Charles was extremely impressed with my presentation. I'm practically guaranteed the promotion to executive VP once the numbers are finalized." My parents nodded appreciatively while Jessica beamed with pride. I took a long sip of coffee, the irony almost too much to bear. There would be no promotion, at least not in the way Bradley expected. In less than 2 weeks, Thompson Industries wouldn't even exist as the company he knew. "What about you, Samantha?" my father asked, trying to include me in the conversation. "Anything new at work?" Before I could answer, Bradley chuckled. "Dad, you know Sam can't talk about spreadsheets without putting us all to sleep." "Actually," I began, but Bradley wasn't finished. "If you want my advice, Sam," he said, leaning forward with the air of someone bestowing great wisdom, "you should consider a lateral move into something with more visibility. Maybe marketing or client relations. Those analytical back-office roles are career dead ends for women. No offense," he added with a smile that suggested he knew he was being magnanimous. I felt my jaw tighten. "None taken," I managed. "I'm actually quite happy with my career trajectory." Sure, Bradley nodded condescendingly. "But you're what, 32 now?" I thought of the Reynolds Enterprises board members I'd been presenting to for months, preparing them for the acquisition. "It looks beautiful, Jess. Try to relax and enjoy your party." Bradley arrived an hour before the guests, immediately inspecting everything with a critical eye. "The champagne should be French, not California," he muttered to Jessica. who immediately looked distressed and rushed off to speak with the catering manager. Left alone with me, Bradley straightened his designer tie, fighting the urge to tell him exactly how important my work was about to become to his future. Instead, I retreated to a quiet corner of the terrace, sipping champagne and counting the days until the acquisition announcement. Jessica found me there, her perfect makeup unable to hide her annoyance. "Could you at least try to socialize? Bradley went out of his way to invite some nice guys from accounting for you." "I'm not interested in Bradley's hand-picked accountants, Jess. Why do you always have to be so difficult?" she hissed, keeping her smile in place for any onlookers. "Bradley is just trying to help. I don't need his help with my personal life or my career." "Well, you need someone's help," she snapped. "You're embarrassing me by sulking in the corner. Just play along for one night. Is that too much to ask?" I stared at my sister, this person I'd grown up with and loved deeply, wondering when she'd become so willing to mold herself around a man like Bradley. "Fine," I conceded. "1 hour of socializing, and then I have work to do." "On a Saturday night?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "You're proving Bradley's point, you know." As I made meaningless small talk with Bradley's colleagues for the next hour, I felt a growing distance between Jessica and myself, a rift that would only widen once the acquisition was announced. The next morning, I met Howard for coffee at a discreet cafe across town, needing to vent my frustrations to the one person who knew the full situation. "I don't know how much longer I can maintain my composure around him," I admitted after relating the events of the engagement party. "Every time he dismisses my career or makes some sexist comment about women in support roles, I want to tell him exactly who'll be evaluating his performance in 2 weeks." Howard listened thoughtfully. "The acquisition announcement is scheduled for Thursday. Just a few more days of keeping this under wraps. And then what? Jessica will know I've kept this enormous secret. Bradley will be humiliated. Family gatherings will become battlegrounds. Would you prefer to turn down the CEO position to preserve family peace?" Howard asked directly. I didn't hesitate. "No, I've earned this opportunity. I'm not going to diminish myself to protect Bradley's ego or Jessica's fantasy relationship." Howard nodded, satisfied. "For what it's worth, I think this revelation might ultimately be good for your sister. She deserves better than a man who dismisses talented women as just the help." "I hope she sees it that way," I sighed. "As for you," Howard continued, "I've never been more confident in my choice for CEO. The way you've handled this personal conflict, while maintaining absolute professionalism, shows exactly the kind of leadership Thompson Industries needs." His words strengthened my resolve. In just a few days, Bradley Thompson would learn that underestimating women, particularly this woman, had been the mistake of his career. Thursday morning arrived with a surreal quality. After months of preparation and weeks of enduring Bradley's condescension, the day of reckoning had finally come. I arrived at Reynolds Enterprises headquarters at 6 a.m., 3 hours before the scheduled board meeting, where the acquisition would be announced. The executive conference room needed to be perfect. I personally arranged the presentation materials, checked the technology for the 5th time, and reviewed my notes until I could recite the entire presentation from memory. This moment wasn't just about proving Bradley wrong. It was about stepping into my power as a leader and embracing the role I'd earned through years of dedication and excellence. Howard arrived at 8, looking calm and collected in his bespoke suit. "Ready for the big reveal, CEO Mitchell?" he asked with a knowing smile. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, smoothing my blazer. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A tailored charcoal suit that conveyed authority without trying too hard, accented with a subtle sapphire necklace that had been my grandmother's. At precisely 8:30, the receptionist called to inform us that the Thompson Industries contingent had arrived. I took a deep breath, centering myself for what was about to unfold. Showtime. When the door opened, Bradley walked in, deep in conversation with another executive. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me, his expression morphing from confusion to dismissive recognition. "Samantha?" He frowned, looking around as if expecting to see my sister somewhere nearby. "What are you doing here?" "This is an executive meeting." I smiled professionally, continuing to arrange the presentation materials. "Good morning, Bradley." His eyes narrowed as he approached me, lowering his voice to a condescending whisper. This is not a place for assistants or support staff. Whatever you're doing, you need to finish up before the Reynolds team arrives. I am the Reynolds team, I replied calmly. But he wasn't listening. Seriously, you need to leave. Charles will be here any minute, and this meeting is confidential. He reached for the documents I was arranging. I'll take those. I pulled the papers away from his grasp. You'll have your copy during the presentation, Bradley. His face reddened. I don't think you understand the gravity of this meeting. We're discussing a potential business partnership with Reynolds Enterprises that I've been cultivating for months. You need to leave. Now. Before I could respond, Charles Wilson entered with the rest of the Thompson executives. He spotted me immediately, his expression registering surprise then understanding. Samantha, he nodded with newfound respect. I had my suspicions at that dinner party. Well played. Bradley looked between us in confusion. You two know each other? The door opened again, and Howard Reynolds walked in with his executive team. Good morning, everyone, he announced, commanding the room with his presence. Thank you all for coming. I see some of you have already met Samantha Mitchell, though perhaps not in her professional capacity. Bradley's face was a study in bewilderment as Howard continued. For those who haven't had the pleasure, Samantha is one of Reynolds Enterprises' most brilliant financial strategists. For the past 8 months, she has been the architect of what we're here to discuss today. Howard gestured for everyone to take their seats at the large conference table. I took my place at his right hand, directly across from Bradley, whose confusion was gradually giving way to dawning comprehension. Ladies and gentlemen, Howard began once everyone was seated, we believe this merger represents tremendous value for shareholders and exciting opportunities for employees of both organizations. Charles Wilson nodded thoughtfully, seemingly unsurprised by the announcement. Several other Thompson executives looked shocked but not necessarily displeased. Change can be unsettling, Howard acknowledged. But I want to assure everyone that Reynolds Enterprises is committed to a smooth transition. To that end, she works in some back office doing paperwork. Charles Wilson turned to Bradley with a sharp look. Control yourself, Thompson. Howard raised an eyebrow at Bradley's outburst. Ms. Mitchell holds an MBA from Wharton, where she graduated at the top of her class. She has led 3 successful acquisitions for Reynolds Enterprises, including this one, which she has orchestrated flawlessly from start to finish. Her understanding of Thompson Industries' operations, culture, and potential is unmatched. I can think of no one better qualified to lead this company into its next phase. Bradley's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is ridiculous. I've been at Thompson for 7 years. Though internally I was savoring this moment of vindication. I understand change can be difficult, I said, addressing the entire room but looking directly at Bradley. I want to assure everyone that my priority is recognizing and developing the talent already within Thompson Industries. I look forward to working with each of you to build on the company's strengths while exploring new opportunities as part of the Reynolds family. Howard nodded approvingly. Samantha has prepared a comprehensive presentation on the acquisition and integration plans. Shall we proceed? For the next hour, I delivered the presentation I'd been preparing for months, outlining the strategic rationale for the acquisition, projected synergies, integration timeline, and vision for the future. Throughout, I maintained absolute professionalism, never once acknowledging the personal connection to Bradley or the sweet satisfaction of watching him squirm in his seat. The Thompson executives, initially skeptical, grew increasingly engaged as I addressed their concerns with detailed knowledge of their operations and thoughtful plans for the transition. By the end, even the most resistant were asking insightful questions and contributing ideas. Bradley alone remained silent, his earlier outburst apparently having exhausted his capacity for speech. He stared at the table, occasionally shooting me glances of pure venom. As the meeting concluded, Howard invited everyone to a celebratory lunch. I think we could all use some time to process this exciting development in a more relaxed setting, he suggested. The executives filed out, many stopping to congratulate me and introduce themselves properly. Charles Wilson lingered behind, waiting until we were relatively alone. I knew there was more to you than Bradley suggested, he said with a knowing smile. At that dinner party, the way you carried yourself, the insights you offered when you did speak. I suspected you were someone of substance. Thank you for noticing. I replied sincerely. For what it's worth, Charles added, lowering his voice. Bradley's guaranteed promotion was anything but. His performance has been declining for months. Too focused on appearances. Not enough on results. He shook my hand firmly. I look forward to working with you, CEO Mitchell. As Charles left, Bradley finally approached me, his composure somewhat restored but anger simmering just beneath the surface. You set me up, he accused through gritted teeth. You deliberately humiliated me. I met his gaze steadily. I did my job, Bradley. The acquisition has been in progress for 8 months. Long before I knew you were dating my sister. I maintained confidentiality as required by my position. You could have said something, given me some warning, and violated my professional obligations? That's not how business works. I gathered my presentation materials calmly. For what it's worth, I never intended this to be personal. You made it personal with your constant dismissal of my career and capabilities. So this is revenge? Getting back at me for not taking your little finance job seriously. This is business, I corrected him. My appointment as CEO has nothing to do with you and everything to do with my qualifications and Howard's confidence in my leadership abilities. Charles Wilson reappeared at the door. Is everything all right here? Bradley straightened, forcing a smile. Just congratulating my future sister-in-law on her new position. Glad to hear it, Charles said, though his expression suggested he didn't believe Bradley for a second. Bradley, I'd like a word with you in private. As they left, I took a moment to gather myself, the full weight of the morning's events finally hitting me. My phone buzzed incessantly, multiple missed calls and texts from Jessica. Bradley had clearly shared the news. The hours following the announcement passed in a blur of congratulations, strategic discussions, and preliminary transition planning. Throughout it all, my phone continued to vibrate with messages from Jessica, each one more frantic than the last. I put my personal concerns aside. You were magnificent today, he said with genuine pride. How are you holding up? I released a long breath. Professionally, on top of the world. Personally, I have some difficult conversations ahead. He nodded, understanding. Family complications are never easy. Take the rest of the day. The CEO is allowed to handle personal matters occasionally. I thanked him and gathered my things, mentally preparing for the confrontation waiting at home. Sure enough, as I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, I spotted Jessica's car. My sister was sitting on the steps leading to my door, her normally perfect appearance uncharacteristically disheveled. She stood as I approached, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. How could you? Sam? How could you do this to me? I unlocked my door, gesturing for her to come inside rather than creating a scene in the parking lot. Once we were in my living room, the dam broke. Bradley called me in the middle of a client meeting, Jessica said, pacing frantically. He said you've been plotting behind our backs for months. That you deliberately humiliated him in front of his entire company. That you're taking over as CEO just to spite him. I set my briefcase down calmly. Is that what you believe, Jess? I don't know what to believe. My sister and my fiancé. The two people I love most in the world. And you've been keeping enormous secrets from me. Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't. You could have given us some warning before blindsiding Bradley in front of everyone. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. The finalization happened this morning, Jess. That meeting was the announcement. Don't be technical with me, Samantha. This isn't about corporate protocols. This is about loyalty. About family. You want to talk about loyalty? I felt my careful composure cracking. For months I've sat quietly while Bradley belittled my career, my choices, my entire life. I've endured his condescending comments, his dismissive introductions, his helpful suggestions that I find a more suitable job for a woman. Jessica faltered slightly. He's just old-fashioned sometimes. He introduced me to his boss as just the help. He told Charles that women like me are best suited for support roles. He's consistently treated me as less than because I don't fit his narrow definition of what a successful woman should be. He doesn't mean it like that, Jessica protested weakly. Yes, he does, Jess, and you've enabled it. Every time you laughed along with his jokes about my boring job or my single status, you reinforced his belief that it was okay to treat me that way. Jessica sank onto my couch, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said more gently, sitting beside her. But ask yourself honestly, is this really about me hurting Bradley? Or is it about Bradley finally seeing me as I am? And you're afraid of what that reveals about the man you've chosen? She was quiet for a long moment, absently twisting her engagement ring. He was so angry, Sam. I've never seen him like that. He kept saying you'd planned this, that you'd manipulated everyone. I earned this position through hard work and demonstrated leadership. Bradley just happened to be collateral damage to his own ego. What happens now? Jessica asked quietly. Professionally, I'll lead Thompson Industries through this transition as fairly and effectively as I can. Personally, I sighed. That's up to you and Bradley. I won't apologize for my success or for keeping necessary business confidences. Jessica stood abruptly. I need time to think. This is all too much. Take all the time you need, I said, walking her to the door. Just remember, Jess, you deserve someone who values all women, not just the ones who fit his predetermined mold. She left without another word, leaving me emotionally drained but strangely peaceful. For the first time in months, the weight of secrecy was lifted. Whatever happened next, I could face it authentically. My phone buzzed with an email from Howard checking in. I appreciated his concern but assured him I was fine and focused on the road ahead. Another email appeared from Charles Wilson, expressing his admiration for my handling of the announcement and offering his full support during the transition. A third message arrived, a meeting request from HR regarding organizational restructuring discussions. Bradley's position would need to be evaluated in the new company structure. I had a decision to make. Take the high road professionally despite his personal attacks, or use my new authority to sideline him. The temptation to be vindictive was strong, especially after months of enduring his condescension. But that wasn't the kind of leader I wanted to be. I would assess Bradley Thompson as I would any employee, based solely on his merits, contributions, and potential value to the organization. The next morning, I arrived early for my first official day as CEO-designate of Thompson Industries. The receptionist did a double-take as I walked through the front doors. Good morning, I smiled. I'm Samantha Mitchell. Yes, Ms. Mitchell. We received the announcement. Your office is ready. The corner suite on the top floor. As I rode the elevator up, I contemplated the responsibility I now carried. Hundreds of employees would be looking to me for leadership, stability, and vision during this time of change. Their livelihoods and careers were partly in my hands. It was a sobering thought, and one that reinforced my commitment to ethical, compassionate leadership. The HR director was waiting when I arrived at my new office. Ms. Mitchell, welcome. We've prepared the organizational charts you requested, and I've scheduled the meetings with department heads for this afternoon. Thank you. There's one matter I'd like to address immediately, I said, sitting behind the imposing desk that was now mine. My personal connection to Mr. Thompson is irrelevant to this discussion, I stated firmly. His performance, skills, and potential contribution to the company are all that matter. I'd like to see his complete personnel file and performance reviews for the past 3 years. For the next hour, I reviewed Bradley's work history objectively. His early years showed promise and strong results, but the past 18 months revealed a pattern of declining performance, increased focus on appearances over substance, and concerning feedback about his treatment of junior staff, particularly women. When Bradley arrived at the office later that morning, noticeably absent from the executive briefing, I asked HR to send him to my office. He entered with barely concealed hostility. Enjoying your new kingdom, Your Highness? Have a seat, Bradley, I replied calmly. We need to discuss your role in the reorganized company. Let me guess, you're firing me? Your perfect revenge. Actually, I've reviewed your file thoroughly. Your early work here was impressive. You have skills and knowledge that could be valuable during this transition and beyond. His expression registered surprise before quickly masking it. So what's the catch? No catch. I'm offering you a position in the restructured operations department. Not at your current VP level, I added as he began to look smug, but as a senior manager reporting to the new operations director we're bringing in from Reynolds. A demotion, he said flatly. A fresh start, I corrected. With compensation adjusted accordingly, of course. Your recent performance doesn't justify an executive position, but you have potential if you're willing to refocus on results rather than appearances. Bradley stared at me for a long moment. And if I refuse? Everything is business with you, isn't it, Samantha? Not everything, I said quietly. But this company, these employees, their livelihoods, yes, that's business. And I take it very seriously. Bradley stood, straightening his tie. I'll need time to consider my options. Of course. Please let HR know your decision by Friday. As he reached the door, he paused. Does Jessica know you're offering to keep me on? My discussions with employees are confidential. What you tell Jessica is your business. After he left, I exhaled slowly. The conversation had gone better than expected. I hadn't succumbed to the temptation to be petty or vindictive, and I'd made a decision that genuinely served the company's interests, while giving Bradley a fair chance to prove himself. Strategic planning sessions, and the countless decisions that come with merging two corporate cultures. The acquisition of Thompson Industries had proceeded more smoothly than anyone anticipated. The open-door policy I'd implemented had initially raised eyebrows among the old guard who were accustomed to hierarchical leadership. According to office gossip, which inevitably made its way to me despite my efforts to stay above it, he told colleagues he refused to work for Jessica's sister out of principle. I suspected his pride had made the decision more than any principle, but I respected his choice to leave with dignity. What I hadn't anticipated was Jessica's reaction. 3 weeks after the acquisition announcement, she'd called me, asking to meet for coffee at our favorite cafe, Neutral Territory, for what I assumed would be another difficult conversation. When she arrived, I was surprised to see her without her engagement ring. It's over, she said simply, sliding into the booth across from me. I broke it off with Bradley. Not just about you, but about women in general. About me. She looked up, her eyes clear and determined. You were right. I deserved better. What happened? He wanted me to choose sides. Said I couldn't support both my sister and my fiancé. That I needed to prove my loyalty. She shook her head. The more he talked, the more I realized this wasn't about loyalty at all. It was about control. He couldn't handle that you had achieved something he couldn't. And that made you reconsider things? That, and finding out he'd been lying about other things too. When I asked more questions about his guaranteed promotion, he got defensive. I called Charles Wilson directly. I raised an eyebrow, impressed by my sister's initiative. What did Charles say? That Bradley had been on performance probation for months. That his promotion was never guaranteed, in fact. He was at risk of being demoted even before the acquisition. Jessica sighed. I realized I didn't really know the man I was planning to marry. I was in love with the image, not the reality. That conversation had marked the beginning of healing between Jessica and me. Over the following months, our relationship had strengthened as we both grew, me into my role as a visible leader, and Jessica into a more confident, self-reliant woman who had recently started her own interior design business. Today we were meeting for our now regular Sunday brunch, and they've already referred me to 2 of their friends. That's fantastic, Jess, I said sincerely, genuinely proud of her success. Your business is really taking off. All thanks to you, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. If you hadn't stood your ground, I might still be planning a wedding to a man who thought women belonged in supporting roles. You would have figured it out eventually, I assured her. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. Maybe, she conceded, but it might have taken years and a messy divorce. So thank you, even if I wasn't very grateful at the time. We ordered our usual avocado toast for her, eggs Benedict for me, and fell into comfortable conversation about work, family, and the future. So, Jessica said casually as we were finishing our meals, I met someone interesting at the Morrisons' housewarming party last weekend. I raised an eyebrow. Professional interesting or personal interesting? Both actually, she smiled. His name is Daniel. He's an architect who worked on their house renovation. We got talking about design philosophy and ended up exchanging numbers for professional collaboration. She made air quotes around the last two words. And is there potential for this professional collaboration to become something more? I teased. Maybe, she admitted with a slight blush. He's different from the guys I usually go for. Quieter. More thoughtful. Listens more than he speaks. And when I mentioned my sister was a CEO, he seemed genuinely impressed rather than threatened. Sounds promising, I nodded approvingly. I smiled. I learned from the best, she replied warmly. You never compromised who you were, even when it would have been easier to play along with Bradley's narrative. I admire that more than you know. Her words touched me deeply. Throughout my career, I'd wondered if my preference for working behind the scenes had been a form of hiding, of playing small. Now I understood it had simply been a different path. No less valuable, no less impactful. Stepping into the CEO role hadn't changed who I was. I hope he's learned something from all this. Me too, Jessica nodded. Not for his sake, but for whoever he dates next. We paused at her car, and she turned to me with a serious expression. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you all those times Bradley dismissed your work. I should have been a better sister. And I'm sorry I kept such a huge secret from you. Even if it was professionally necessary, I replied. But look where we both ended up, stronger, wiser, and closer than before. The Mitchell sisters taking on the world. Jessica grinned, giving me a hug before getting into her car. As I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From behind-the-scenes strategist to public-facing CEO. Yet the most profound changes weren't in my title or office location. They were in my willingness to be seen, to step into the spotlight when necessary, and to lead with both strength and empathy. I'd learned that success isn't about proving others wrong, but about proving yourself right, about living up to your own potential, rather than others' expectations. I pulled into my driveway with a sense of profound peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges at Reynolds Thompson, and I would face them as I always had, with intelligence, integrity, and an unwavering belief in my own capabilities. Only now, I wouldn't be doing it from behind the scenes. I would be leading from the front, visible and valued, exactly as I deserve to be. If you've ever been underestimated or dismissed in your professional life, I hope my story inspires you to stand in your power. Remember that true leadership isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about impact, integrity, and the courage to be seen for who you truly are. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. I'd love to hear in the comments about a time when you proved the doubters wrong. Until next time, keep shining your light. The world needs your unique brilliance.